Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped off the transport ship and onto the massive space station. The Galactic Council's main station was huge, bigger than any human city. It floated in space between 3 stars, and the light from all 3 made the metal walls shine like silver. Elena carried a small bag with her. Inside were data chips that held humanity's greatest gifts to the galaxy. Medical cures for diseases that killed millions, farming methods that could feed hungry worlds, clean energy that would never run out. She had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. The human race had been exploring space for 60 years now. They had met many alien species and made friends, with some of them. But they had never been invited to join the Galactic Council. The Council was made up of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. Being a member meant you had a voice in how things were run. Elena walked through the station's halls. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved around her. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others slithered or floated or crawled. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. A tall, thin alien with blue skin approached her. "Ambassador Vasquez," it said in perfect English. "I am Keth of the Zephyrians. We have been waiting for you." Elena smiled. The Zephyrians were humanity's closest friends among the alien races. They looked almost human, except for their blue skin and large silver eyes. They had been the ones to suggest that humans should apply for council membership. "Thank you, Keth," Elena said. "I hope today goes well." Keth's expression grew worried. "I must warn you. Not all council members want humans to join. Some think your people are too young, too dangerous. Be careful what you say." They walked together toward the council chamber. Elena had studied each council member for months. The Zarathi were large, reptile-like creatures with scales and sharp teeth. They controlled an empire of slave worlds. The Vorthak looked like living crystals, and thought they were better than all other life forms. The Threnodi were insect-like and cared only about their hives. There were 12 species on the council in total. Only 3 supported humanity. The rest either did not care or actively opposed them. The council chamber was enormous. 12 huge chairs sat in a circle, each one designed for a different type of alien body. In the center was a small platform, where Elena would give her presentation. Council members filed in one by one. The Zarathi representative was especially large, with red scales and yellow eyes. His name was Vextar, and he ruled over 40 slave worlds. The Vorthak representative looked like a walking diamond. Light bent around its body in strange ways. Elena took her place on the platform. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Honored council members," she began. "I come here today representing the human race. We ask to join this council not as conquerors or rivals, but as friends who want to help make the galaxy a better place." She activated her data pad. Holographic. Images appeared in the air above her. The first showed a planet covered in green farms. "We offer new farming methods that can grow food in any soil, even on dead worlds. We have tested these methods on 12 different planets. Each one now produces enough food to feed billions." Some council members leaned forward with interest. The insect-like Threnodi clicked their mandibles excitedly. Their hive worlds always struggled with hunger. Elena's next image showed a hospital. "We offer medical advances that can cure the Red Death that kills Zarathi children. We can heal the crystal rot that destroys Vorthak bodies. We can stop the mind plague that has killed millions of Zephyrians." Now even the hostile council members were paying attention. These diseases had plagued their people for thousands of years. "And we offer clean energy," Elena continued. The hologram showed a small device no bigger than a human hand. "This fusion reactor can power an entire city and will never run out of fuel. We can teach you to build them." The council chamber was silent. Elena could see the alien faces calculating what these gifts were worth. Some looked amazed. Others looked suspicious. Vextar, the Zarathi, was the first to speak. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. "These gifts are impressive, human. But what do you want in return?" "Nothing," Elena said simply. "We share these things freely, whether you accept us into the council or not. We believe all intelligent life deserves to be healthy and well-fed." The Vorthak representative's crystalline body rang like a bell when it spoke. "Your species has only been in space for 60 of your years. You have spread to 200 worlds in that time. This growth is concerning." Elena had expected this question. "We explore because we are curious. We settle new worlds because our population is growing. But we have never taken a world that belonged to another species. We have never enslaved anyone. We have never started a war. Yet, said Vextar, give your species time. All young races become violent eventually. Some of us believe humans are different, said Keth, speaking for the first time. They have shown only friendship to every species they have met. The council members began to argue among themselves. Elena stood quietly on her platform and waited. She could hear them debating in a dozen different languages. Some wanted to accept humanity immediately. Others wanted to reject them. A few suggested a trial membership. After an hour, the arguing stopped. The council's leader, an ancient creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through caves. We will consider your application, human Elena. You will wait in the guest quarters while we debate. This may take several days. Elena bowed politely. I understand. Thank you for this opportunity. Keth escorted her to the guest quarters. The rooms were comfortable, with a bed and desk sized for humans. There was even a window that looked out into space. How do you think it went? Elena asked. Keth's silver eyes were troubled. Better than I feared. Worse than I hoped. Your gifts impressed them. But some are afraid of human expansion. They think your people reproduce too quickly and spread too far. We can't help being who we are, Elena said. No, Keth agreed. But some council members think that is exactly the problem. Elena spent the next 3 days in the guest quarters. She read reports from human colonies and talked to her government on Earth through encrypted messages. The galaxy was watching this meeting. Everyone wanted to know if humans would join the council. On the 4th day, Keth came to get her. His face was grim. They have reached a decision, he said. But Elena, I fear it is not the decision you hoped for. Elena followed him back to the council chamber. This time, the mood felt different, darker. Several council members would not look at her when she entered. The jellyfish-like leader floated forward. Human Elena Vasquez, we have considered your application to join the Galactic Council. Elena held her breath. Your offer of gifts is generous. Your people's achievements are impressive. But the council has voted, and we must decline your membership at this time. Elena felt her heart sink, but she kept her face calm. May I ask why? Vextar stood up from his chair. His yellow eyes gleamed with something that might have been satisfaction. Because, human, your species is dangerous. You spread too fast. You grow too quickly. You will upset the balance of power in this galaxy. We have never threatened anyone, Elena protested. Not yet, the Vorthak representative chimed in. But you will. All young species do. It is better to stop you now before you become a problem. Elena looked around the chamber. Only 3 council members seemed unhappy with this decision. The rest looked satisfied or indifferent. I see, Elena said quietly. Then I suppose there is nothing more to discuss. But Vextar was not finished. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Actually, human, there is one more thing. You have violated council space by bringing contamination to this station. Elena stared at him. What contamination? I followed all your protocols. The contamination of human ambition, Vexitar said. The contamination of hope. These things are dangerous to the proper order of the galaxy. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. This was not going the way she had expected at all. Elena felt the temperature in the council chamber drop. The alien faces around her had changed from unfriendly to threatening. Keth stepped closer to her, his blue skin pale with worry. What exactly are you accusing me of? Elena asked, keeping her voice steady. Vextar's reptilian face twisted into what might have been a grin. You have spread human corruption throughout council space. Your very presence here pollutes our sacred halls. The Vorthak representative's crystal body began to glow with an angry red light. The human seeks to disrupt millions of years of galactic order with her talk of gifts and friendship. Elena looked around the chamber in disbelief. I came here in peace. I offered to help your people. How is that corruption? Because, said the jellyfish-like council leader, your species threatens the natural order. You reproduce too quickly. You explore too aggressively. You change things that should stay the same. Keth spoke up, his voice shaking with anger. This is ridiculous. Elena has done nothing wrong. She followed every protocol, respected every custom. Silence, Zephyrian, Vextar hissed. Your species is already under suspicion for supporting these humans. Do not make your situation worse. Elena watched in horror as security guards began to surround the chamber. These were not the normal station security she had seen before. These guards wore black armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. I demand to speak with Earth, Elena said. I have diplomatic immunity. The council leader's tentacles waved in what might have been laughter. Diplomatic immunity only applies to council members and their allies. Humans are neither. Elena's mind raced. This was becoming a nightmare. Then I request safe passage off the station. If my presence is unwelcome, I will leave. Too late for that, Vextar said. He stood up from his massive chair and walked toward Elena. Each step made the floor shake. You have already contaminated this place. The damage is done. What damage? Elena shouted. I have done nothing but speak words and show pictures. You have given hope to species that should not have hope, the Vorthak said. Its crystalline voice rang through the chamber like breaking glass. You have shown them possibilities that should not exist. Elena suddenly understood. The council did not fear humanity because they were dangerous. They feared humanity because they offered change. And change threatened the council's power. You are afraid, she said quietly. You are afraid that other species will see what humans can do and demand better for themselves. Vexitar's yellow eyes flashed with rage. We fear nothing, least of all a pathetic young species like yours. But Elena could see the truth in their faces. The council ruled through fear and control. They kept other species weak and dependent. Humanity's gifts of food, medicine, and energy would make those species strong and independent. The council will now pass judgment, the leader announced. Elena Vasquez of Earth, you are charged with contamination of council space and disruption of galactic order. These are not real crimes, Keth protested. This is a mockery of justice. Justice is what the council says it is, Vexitar replied. He pressed a button on his chair's armrest. A large screen appeared in the air above the chamber. Elena gasped when she saw what was on the screen. It was a broadcast being sent to every world in the galaxy. Billions of beings were watching this trial. Let all species see what happens to those who threaten the peace of the galaxy, the council leader announced to the cameras. Elena realized this was never about her crimes. This was about sending a message. The council wanted every species in the galaxy to see what happened to those who got too ambitious. The trial, if it could be called that, lasted only minutes. Elena was not allowed to defend herself. No evidence was presented. The council simply voted. Guilty, said Vextar. Guilty, said the Vorthak. One by one, 9 of the 12 council members declared Elena guilty. Only Keth and 2 others voted to find her innocent. Elena Vasquez, the council leader intoned, you are sentenced to purification by stellar fire. Elena's blood turned to ice. She had read about stellar fire in the old records. It was an ancient execution method that slowly burned the victim, alive using heat that matched the core of a star. No! Keth jumped forward, but the black-armored guards grabbed him. This is murder! She is innocent! She is contamination, Vextar said calmly, and contamination must be burned away. 2 guards seized Elena's arms. She did not struggle as they dragged her to the center of the chamber. A metal platform rose from the floor, and energy fields began to form around it. Please, Elena said, looking at the council members who had voted against her. If you do this, humanity will know. Earth will know. Let them know, the Vorthak replied. Let them see what happens to species that do not know their place. The energy field around Elena began to glow. She could feel heat starting to build. The stellar fire execution was designed to be slow. It would take hours for her to die, and every moment would be agony. Elena looked up at the cameras broadcasting this scene across the galaxy. In a few hours, Earth would receive this signal. Her family would watch her die. Her government would see the council's true nature. The heat was getting stronger now. Elena's clothes began to smoke, but her voice was still clear when she spoke. Keth, she called to her friend, tell my family I love them. Keth was crying, the silver tears streaming down his blue face. Elena, I am so sorry. If I could trade places with you, I would. I know, Elena said, but this is not your fault. None of this is your fault. The heat was becoming painful now. Elena's skin was turning red. She looked directly into the cameras. My name is Elena Vasquez, she said clearly. I am a human being. I came here in peace, offering gifts to help all the species of the galaxy. For this, the council burns me alive. Vextar laughed. No one will remember your name, human. You are nothing. Elena smiled through the pain. You are wrong. Humans always remember, and humans never forgive those who murder the innocent. The heat was becoming unbearable. Elena's vision was starting to blur, but she managed to activate the emergency transmitter hidden in her sleeve. A last message would go out to Earth faster than the broadcast signal. "To Earth," she whispered into the transmitter. "They showed us who they really are. Now show them who we really are." The stellar fire burned hotter. Elena's screams echoed through the council chamber and across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched in horror as a peaceful diplomat was slowly murdered for the crime of offering help. Keth tried to break free from the guards, but there were too many of them. He could only watch helplessly as his friend died. Elena's last thought was of Earth, of her family and friends, of the human colonies spread across the stars. She hoped they would be smart enough to learn from her death. She hoped they would remember that peace was a luxury they could not afford in a galaxy ruled by monsters. The stellar fire consumed her completely. When it was over, nothing remained but ash scattered across the chamber floor. Vexitar looked satisfied. Let this be a lesson to all species who think they can challenge the Council's authority. But in the depths of space, Elena's message was already racing toward Earth at faster-than-light speed. And across the galaxy, other species watched the broadcast in shock and growing anger. The Threnody hive minds whispered to each other about the human medicines that could have saved their dying young. Former slave races thought about the human promises of freedom and equality. Even some council species began to question whether this execution was justice or murder. The council thought they had ended the human threat. They thought they had sent a clear message about the price of defying their rule. They had no idea what they had actually done. In the cold depths of space, Elena's death had lit a fire that would soon burn brighter than any star. And when that fire reached Earth, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of when someone they loved was murdered before their eyes. The council chamber slowly emptied. Keth was dragged away, still crying for his murdered friend. The cameras stopped broadcasting. The lights dimmed. But in a small apartment on Earth, Elena's mother was about to receive the worst news of her life. And in military headquarters across human space, generals were about to learn that their greatest nightmare had become reality. The Council had just declared war on humanity. They simply did not know it yet. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UES Retribution, watching the horror unfold on her screens. Elena's emergency transmission had reached Earth 3 hours ago. The official broadcast of her execution had arrived just minutes later. Around her, the command center was silent except for the hum of computers. Officers stared at their screens in shock. Some were crying, others looked sick. All of them looked angry. Sarah had known Elena personally. They had served together when Elena was still in the military, before she became a diplomat. Elena had been the kindest person Sarah knew. She had dedicated her life to peace and helping others, and the Galactic Council had burned her alive on live television. "Admiral," said Commander Torres, Sarah's second-in-command. "Priority message from Earth Command." Sarah accepted the transmission. President Martinez appeared on her screen. The leader of humanity looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few hours. "Sarah," the president said quietly. "I assume you saw the broadcast?" "Yes, sir." Elena deserved better than this. She did. The president's voice was hard as steel. "The cabinet has voted unanimously. The military councils have voted unanimously. Even the pacifist parties have voted unanimously." Sarah felt her heart begin to race. "Sir?" "Operation Starfall is authorized. All restrictions are lifted. Show them what we really are." The transmission ended. Sarah stood perfectly still for a moment, processing what she had just heard. Operation Starfall was humanity's deepest secret. It was the plan they had hoped never to use. For 60 years, humanity had presented itself to the galaxy as a peaceful, exploratory species. They had built a reputation as traders, scientists, and diplomats. But that had all been a carefully constructed lie. The truth was that humanity had never stopped being what it always was, the deadliest predator ever to evolve on any world. "Communications," Sarah called out. "Send activation code Omega-7 to all fleet units. Priority Alpha." "Yes, Admiral." Code sent. Across human space, sleeping war machines began to wake up. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers powered up weapons systems that could crack planets. Space stations that looked like research facilities revealed missile batteries hidden in their hulls. Mining platforms in asteroid belts activated. The kinetic bombardment systems they had been building for decades. The traders scattered throughout the galaxy received the activation code and opened their hidden weapon lockers. The scientists, studying alien cultures, revealed themselves as intelligence operatives who had been mapping every council military installation for years. The explorers, at the edges of space, turned out to be the advanced scouts of the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Sarah walked to the center of the command deck. Around her, officers were transforming from peaceful explorers into the hardened military professionals they had always been underneath. "Tactical," she called. "Report on Operation Starfall assets." "Ma'am, we have 1,200 ships of the line ready for immediate combat. 6,000 support vessels in position. Orbital bombardment platforms are armed and targeted. All sleeper agents have checked in. We are ready to commence operations." Sarah nodded. Humanity had been preparing for this day since they first left Earth. They had learned early that the galaxy was not the peaceful place it pretended to be. So they had built their military in secret while presenting a friendly face to the stars. "Open a channel to all human forces," Sarah ordered. "Galaxy-wide broadcast." The communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open, Admiral. All forces, standing by." Sarah looked into the camera that would carry her words to every human military unit in the galaxy. Behind her, the flag of Earth hung next to the banner of the United Human Colonies. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding the First Human Fleet. 3 hours ago, our friend and ambassador Elena Vasquez was murdered by the Galactic Council. She was burned alive for the crime of offering medical aid and food to hungry species." Sarah's voice was calm, but every human listening could hear the rage underneath. "For 60 years, we have been the galaxy's friends. We have shared our knowledge freely. We have helped where we could. We have asked for nothing in return but the chance to live in peace." The Admiral paused, letting her words sink in. "The Galactic Council has shown us that peace is not possible with monsters. They murdered Elena to send a message to every species in the galaxy. Do not challenge Council authority. Do not hope for something better. Accept your place or burn." Sarah stepped closer to the camera. "Today, we send our own message. To the Council members who voted for Elena's death. You wanted to see what humans do when you murder one of us. You wanted to know what happens when you threaten our people." Sarah's eyes were hard as diamonds. "Now you will learn," she gestured to her tactical officer. "Execute Operation Starfall. All forces, begin immediate offensive operations. Target priority is Council military assets. Rules of engagement, unrestricted warfare." "Yes, Admiral. Operation Starfall is a go." Across the galaxy, humanity's true nature revealed itself like a flower of destruction blooming in space. The Zarathi homeworld of Scythak was protected by orbital defense platforms that had never been breached in 3,000 years. They were massive structures, each one the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and energy shields. The Zarathi commanders were confident these platforms could stop any attack. They had destroyed the fleets of dozens of rebellious species over the centuries. They did not know that for the past 10 years, human asteroid miners had been working in the outer system. What looked like mining equipment was actually a network of kinetic bombardment platforms, and asteroids that appeared to be natural were actually projectiles waiting to be fired. The attack on Scythak lasted 17 minutes. Hundreds of metal rods, each one moving at a significant fraction of light speed, slammed into the orbital platforms. The platform's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against solid matter moving at such incredible speeds. The platforms disintegrated like soap bubbles hit by bullets. Debris rained down on Scythak's surface as the pride of the Zarathi fleet turned into scrap metal in the span of a few minutes. Meanwhile, in the Vorthak crystal gardens of Nexus Prime, the most beautiful and heavily defended world in Council space, a different kind of horror was unfolding. The Vorthak had always believed their geometric fleet formations were perfect. Their crystalline ships moved in mathematical patterns that had been tested and refined over millions of years. No enemy had ever broken their battle formations, but the human ships that emerged from hyperspace did not follow any recognizable tactical doctrine. They moved like a swarm of angry insects, constantly changing direction and speed. Their formation looked chaotic, random. It was not random at all. The human ships were controlled by artificial intelligence that could think and adapt faster than any living mind. The AI studied the Vorthak formations for exactly 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Then it found the flaws, the perfect geometric. Patterns that had protected the Vorthak for eons became traps. Human ships slipped through gaps in the formations like water flowing through cracks in crystal. They struck at weak points the Vorthak had never even known existed. The crystalline ships, beautiful and ancient and proud, shattered like glass windows hit by hammers. On the Council station itself, Vextar received the first reports with disbelief. Impossible, he snarled. Humans are peaceful. They do not even have a real military. Sir, his aide stammered, we are receiving reports of human attacks throughout Council space. They have destroyed the Scythak defense grid. The Vorthak fleet at Nexus Prime is gone. Our bases at Corvain, Thexus, and Mordain have all gone silent. Vextar's yellow eyes widened. How many ships are they using? We do not know, sir. They appear to be everywhere at once. The truth was even worse than the aide realized. Humanity was not attacking with everything they had. This was just the opening. Move! The real war machine was still waking up. In a command bunker beneath the surface of Mars, General Harrison watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The Red Planet had always been humanity's military heart, though few outsiders knew. Every mountain on Mars hid weapon factories. Every canyon concealed missile silos. Phase 1 complete, reported his aide. All Council military assets in human space have been neutralized. Estimated enemy casualties, 2 million. Human casualties, 0. Phase 2? Harrison asked. Ready to commence. The Liberation fleets are standing by? Harrison nodded. Phase 2 would be different. Phase 1 had been about destroying Council military power. Phase 2 would be about freeing the species the Council had enslaved and oppressed. Execute Phase 2. And send a message to all Council worlds. Any leader who wants to surrender can do so now. This is their only chance. The message went out across the galaxy, carrying with it a simple truth that the Council had never understood. Humanity had not spent 60 years exploring the galaxy. They had spent 60 years preparing for war. And now that war had come, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of when someone murdered their friends. Elena's death had awakened something that the Council would soon wish had stayed asleep forever. The war that followed Elena's execution was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Within 72 hours of Operation Starfall's launch, the Galactic Council's military power was shattered beyond repair. Keth watched from his cell aboard the Council station as reports poured in from across the galaxy. The Zephyrians had been imprisoned after protesting Elena's execution, but their guards had grown careless. The screens in the corridor outside his cell showed news feeds from across Council space. Every feed told the same story. Human forces were everywhere, striking with precision and overwhelming force. On Mordain, the insectoid Threnody had ruled a slave empire for centuries. Their hive queens had used slave labor to build massive industrial complexes that produced weapons for the Council. The slaves were kept weak and hopeless, fed just enough to keep working. The human liberation fleet that arrived at Mordain did not negotiate. They did not issue ultimatums. They simply acted. Dropships descended through Mordain's atmosphere like falling stars. Each ship carried 50 human Marines in powered armor that made them nearly invincible. The Marines moved through the industrial complexes like unstoppable forces of nature. But they did not come as conquerors. They came as liberators. Attention, slaves of Mordain, came the broadcast in a dozen different languages. This is Colonel Martinez of the Human Marine Corps. You are free. Lay down your tools and walk away from your masters. We will protect you. The slave races had lived in fear for so long that many did not believe it at first. But when they saw human Marines gunning down Threnody overseers who tried to stop them from leaving, they began to understand. Freedom had come to Mordain. Threnody hive queens tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed to control slaves, not to fight a real military. Human Marines smashed through their defenses like they were made of paper. The queens themselves were captured alive and held for trial. On world after world, the same scene played out. Species that had been enslaved for thousands of years suddenly found themselves free, and their liberators asked for nothing in return, except a simple promise. Never again. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution as it entered orbit around the Council station. The massive structure that had once seemed so imposing now looked small and vulnerable. Its weapons were offline, its shields were down, half of its docking bays were burning. Admiral, reported her tactical officer, the station is defenseless. We could destroy it with a single missile barrage. No, Chen said quietly. We are not here to destroy. We are here to deliver justice. Human Marines were already boarding the station through multiple entry points. They moved through the corridors with purpose, their armor clanking against the metal floors. Station security tried to stop them, but human weapons and armor were decades ahead of anything the Council had. The Marines had specific orders: capture the Council members who had voted for Elena's execution. Protect those who had voted against it. Free any prisoners. Vexitar barricaded himself in the council chamber with his remaining guards. The massive Zarathi was armed with a plasma rifle nearly as tall as a human. His yellow eyes burned with rage and fear. "Come then, humans!" he roared as the chamber doors exploded inward. "Show me what you think you can do!" The human Marines who entered were led by Sergeant Jackson, a veteran of conflicts most people had never heard of. He looked at Vexitar with cold, professional interest. "Vexitar of the Zarathi Empire," Jackson said through his armor's speakers. "You are under arrest for the murder of Ambassador Elena Vasquez and crimes against sapient beings. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war." Vexitar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "I do not surrender to inferior species." He fired his plasma rifle. The bolt of superheated gas struck Jackson's armor and splashed harmlessly off the energy shields. Jackson did not even step backward. "Sir," Jackson said calmly, "that was a mistake." The Marines moved with practiced coordination. Stun grenades filled the chamber with blinding light and deafening sound. When Vexitar's vision cleared, he found himself surrounded by humans who seemed to have appeared from nowhere. His guards were unconscious on the floor. His weapon had been torn from his hands like a toy taken from a child. And Jackson was standing, right in front of him, close enough that Vexitar could see his reflection in the Marine's visor. "You murdered a peaceful diplomat," Jackson said. "In human culture, that is unforgivable." Vexitar tried to strike with his claws, but human reflexes were faster. Jackson's armored hand caught the Zarathi's wrist and squeezed. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the chamber. "Elena Vasquez came here offering medical aid that could have saved Zarathi children," Jackson continued as if nothing had happened. "Instead of thanking her, you burned her alive. What kind of monster does that?" Vexitar was dragged away in chains that could hold a creature 10 times his size. As he was hauled through the corridors, he saw other council members being arrested by human forces. The Vorthak representative was carried in a containment field that kept its crystalline body from shattering. The insectoid leaders were wrapped in metal nets. Only Keth and the other council members who had voted against Elena's execution were treated as allies. Human medics checked them for injuries while technicians worked to free them from their cells. Keth of the Zephyrians said, a human officer, "I am Captain Morris. Admiral Chen sends her regards and asks if you require medical assistance." Keth's silver eyes were wide with amazement. "You came for Elena. Even though she is dead, you came for her." "Humans do not abandon their own," Morris replied. "Elena was our friend. Anyone who was her friend is our friend. Anyone who hurt her is our enemy." The captain gestured toward the corridor where Vexitar had been dragged away. "Those who voted for her death will face justice. Those who tried to save her have our protection." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the full scope of humanity's military might was revealing itself. Ships that had pretended to be cargo haulers unveiled weapon systems that could crack moons, space stations that looked like research facilities deployed, fighters by the thousand. Even civilian colonies turned out to have hidden defense networks that could stop invasion fleets. The Council species began to understand a terrifying truth. Humanity had never been the peaceful explorers they pretended to be. They had been preparing for war since the day they left Earth. On the agricultural world of Kepler 7, Council forces tried to make a stand. The planet's governor, a toad-like creature called Blix, had boasted that his world's defenses could stop any human attack. The human response was swift and decisive. A single ship emerged from hyperspace and hung in orbit above the planet's capital city. It was not a large ship by human standards, but it was clearly a warship. No attempt had been made to disguise its purpose. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the UES Thunderbolt," came the transmission. "Governor Blix, you have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why that is a bad idea." Blix laughed from his palace bunker. "One ship against my entire defense grid? You humans are as stupid as you are arrogant." He ordered his planetary weapons to fire. Energy beams and missile volleys rose from the surface toward the human ship. The Thunderbolt's shields flared as the weapons struck, but the ship was undamaged. 59 seconds, Captain Rodriguez said calmly. Blix fired everything he had. The sky above his world filled with explosions as thousands of weapons struck the human ship. Surely nothing could survive such a barrage. When the light faded, the Thunderbolt was still there. Its shields were still holding, and its weapons were powering up. "Time's up," Rodriguez said. The Thunderbolt fired a single shot. A beam of coherent energy, invisible except for the air it ionized, reached down from orbit and touched the palace where Blix was hiding. The palace simply disappeared. One moment it was there, the next, it was a crater of melted stone. Blix, and his entire command structure were gone in an instant. "This is Captain Rodriguez to all remaining Council forces on Kepler 7, the transmission continued. "Governor Blix chose unwisely. You have a choice. Surrender now or share his fate. You have 10 seconds to decide." The surrender was immediate and unconditional. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds as the truth became clear. The Council's military technology was decades behind humanity's. Their tactics were outdated. Their strategies were designed for fighting other Council species, not for facing humans. But the most shocking revelation was not humanity's military power. It was their restraint. Every human attack targeted military installations and government buildings. Civilian areas were left untouched. When Council forces tried to use civilians as human shields, human precision weapons found ways to strike. Only the military targets. Prisoners were treated well and given medical care. Conquered worlds were not looted or occupied. Instead, humans helped rebuild what had been damaged in the fighting and then left the worlds to govern themselves. "Why?" asked Zexkala, a Council general who had been captured on the fortress world of Grimhold. "Why do you show mercy to your enemies?" Commander Williams, the human officer interviewing her, considered the question carefully. Because Elena would have wanted it that way. She believed all sapient life had value, even the lives of those who killed her. Zexkala stared at the human in confusion. "You wage war in the name of a dead diplomat?" "We wage war to prevent more Elenas for 6 months after Elena Vasquez died." Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the same chamber where her friend had been murdered. The room looked very different now. The ancient execution device had been removed and replaced with a memorial statue of Elena. She was carved from white marble, holding a scroll that bore the founding principles of the new Galactic Federation. Light from the 3 suns outside made the statue seem to glow. Around the statue, representatives from over 200 species sat in comfortable chairs arranged in concentric circles. There were no throne-like seats for ancient rulers, no elevated platforms for the powerful. Everyone sat at the same level, equals in the new order. Chen wore her dress uniform, but she was not here as a military commander. Today, she spoke as the representative of humanity to the first session of the Galactic Federation Assembly. The transformation had been swift but thorough. The old Council's reign of terror was over. Vextar and the other Council members who had voted for Elena's execution were in prison, serving life sentences for murder and crimes against sapient beings. Their empires had been dismantled, their slave worlds liberated. Species that had been oppressed for thousands of years now had voices in galactic government. The Kepling fish people, who had been used as living food by the Zerathi, now held 3 seats in the assembly. The crystal miners of Vega 7, enslaved for so long they had forgotten their original name, were learning to be free again. "Friends," Chen began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. 6 months ago, Elena Vasquez died in this room. She was murdered for the crime of offering hope to the oppressed and aid to the suffering. The chamber was silent. Many of the representatives had watched Elena's execution on the galaxy-wide broadcast. Others had heard the stories from survivors. Elena came here believing that different species could work together to make the galaxy a better place. The old Council rejected that vision. They chose fear over hope, oppression over freedom, murder over mercy. Chen gestured to the memorial statue. But Elena's dream did not die with her. It lives on in this assembly, in this new federation we are building, together. A representative from the Threnody hives stood up. These insect people had once been among the Council's most brutal enforcers, but their queens had been overthrown by their own workers after the truth about human medical advances came out. Speaker Chen, the Threnody, clicked in its translated voice. "Our hives have a question. Humans defeated the Council utterly. You could rule us all as conquerors. Why do you choose to share power instead?" It was a good question, one that many species had wondered about. Human military might was overwhelming. Human technology was decades ahead of anyone else's. Humans could have easily become the new masters of the galaxy. Chen smiled. "Because that is not who we are. Elena did not die so that humans could become tyrants. She died believing that all sapient life has value, that all species deserve freedom and dignity." She walked closer to the Threnody representative. "We liberated your hive worlds not to rule them, but to free them. We destroyed the old Council, not to replace it, but to build something better." Keth, now representing the Zephyrians in the new Federation, stood up. His blue skin had returned to its normal healthy color, and his silver eyes were bright with hope. "The humans speak truly," he said. "When they freed my people from Council prison cells, they asked for nothing in return except friendship. When they shared their medical technology with us, they charged no price except that we use it to help others. Other representatives began to nod. The humans had indeed kept their promises. Slave worlds had been liberated and left to govern themselves. Advanced technology had been shared freely. Medical aid had been given to any species that asked, with no strings attached. An elderly Vorthak stood up slowly. This was Kelthar, one of the few crystal beings who had opposed the old regime. "I must speak," she said, her voice ringing like distant music. "My people committed terrible crimes under the old council. We believed ourselves superior to all other life. We participated in Elena Vasquez's murder." The chamber grew tense. Many species still harbored anger toward the Vorthak for their role in the council's atrocities. But the humans did not seek revenge against all Vorthak, Kelthar continued. They distinguished between those who were guilty and those who were innocent. They offered us a chance to prove we could change, to become better than we were. She gestured to several other Vorthak representatives in the chamber. "Many of my people have accepted this chance. We work now to repair the damage we helped cause. We serve in hospitals built with human medical technology, healing species we once oppressed." Chen nodded respectfully to Kelthar. "The Federation is built on the principle that all beings can change, can grow, can become better than they were. We judge people by their actions, not their species." A small furry representative from one of the former slave worlds raised a tentative paw. "What about justice? The humans have given us freedom and aid, but what about justice for what was done to us?" This was perhaps the most important question. Millions of beings had suffered under the Council's rule. Entire species had been enslaved or exterminated. How could such crimes ever be truly answered? Chen's expression grew solemn. "Justice takes many forms. The leaders who ordered these crimes are in prison. The systems that enabled oppression have been dismantled. But the greatest justice we can give to those who suffered is to ensure it never happens again." She turned to address the entire assembly. "That is why we are here. The Federation is not just a government. It is a promise. A promise that no species will ever again burn diplomats alive for offering help. A promise that no being will be enslaved simply because they are weak. A promise that when someone cries out for aid, others will answer." The representative from Earth's lunar colonies, an elderly woman named Dr. Patel, stood up. "The humans have one more gift to offer the Federation," she announced. The chamber buzzed with curiosity. Humanity had already shared medical technology that had saved billions of lives. They had provided agricultural techniques that had ended hunger on dozens of worlds. They had given defensive technologies to protect former slave worlds from pirates and raiders. "We offer the gift of truth," Dr. Patel said. "For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by lies and secrets. The Council told you that some species were naturally superior, that slavery was the natural order, that the strong had the right to oppress the weak." She activated a holographic display that showed the Federation's new charter. This document contains no lies, no hidden clauses, no secret protocols. It says simply that all sapient beings have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It says that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed. It says that when any government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. The principles were simple, but they were revolutionary in a galaxy that had been ruled by force for millions of years. A young Zarathi stood up nervously. Unlike the old council members, this one was small and had kind eyes. "My species, we did terrible things under the old regime. We enslaved others. We murdered innocents. How can you trust us to be part of this federation?" Chen walked over to the young Zarathi. "What is your name?" "Kextar. I was a slave tender on Mordain. I freed slaves when the humans came, but I still feel shame for what my people did." "Kextar," Chen said gently, "you are not responsible for the crimes of others, even if they share your species. You chose to do the right thing when it mattered. That is all anyone can ask." She addressed the entire chamber. "The Federation is not about the past. It is about the future we choose to build together. Every being in this room has the power to make the galaxy better than it was." As the first session of the Federation Assembly continued, representatives shared stories of transformation. Former slave worlds were becoming centers of learning and art. Species that had been enemies for millennia were working together on scientific projects. Children who had grown up in fear were learning to dream of better futures. But perhaps the most important change was in how conflicts were resolved. When disputes arose between member worlds, they were settled through negotiation and compromise, not through force. The Federation's military existed only to protect member worlds from external threats and to prevent any group from trying to rebuild the old system of oppression. As the day's session ended, representatives began to file out of the chamber. Many stopped to look at Elena's memorial statue, reading the words carved at its base. She believed all beings deserved to be free. Chen was one of the last to leave. She stood before the statue for a long moment, thinking about her friend. "We did it, Elena," she whispered. "We built the galaxy you dreamed of." Keth approached quietly and stood beside her. "Do you think she would be proud of what we have accomplished?" Chen smiled. Elena always said that the measure of a civilization was not how it treated the powerful, but how it treated the weak. Look around, Keth. The weak are no longer powerless. The oppressed are free. The hungry are fed. She paused, looking at the diverse group of beings still talking in small groups around the chamber. "Yes, I think she would be